So today we're going to talk about play-by-posts and how they are fantastic for groups that are super busy. We're actually using them in our West Marches campaign, and we've been doing it alongside our West Marches for about 6 months. And I've gathered a few tips that I think could help you if this is the style of game that you would like to play, because I feel like play-by-post is harder and it needs a little bit more structure and more guidelines to keep it flowing. So without further ado, let's dive in. Shall we? What is play-by-post? Well, play-by-post is playing a tabletop RPG game with written posts instead of an actual live session. Most groups I feel like use Discord, and I'll be coming at this from a Discord perspective because that's where we play. But obviously you could do this via forums or other mediums. Probably forums was the first way of, creating this kind of play style. But essentially players are going to write down their dialogue, their actions, their roles, and the DM is going to narrate what happens as you go. It really does provide a lot of flexibility, but you need the clear expectations. And so here are some tips to kind of keep things rolling. Tip number 1, keep your posts really clear. It's very easy to write these long descriptive messages about what your character is going to do, about the situation at large. Detailed writing and roleplay is a lot of fun, but huge posts like that can slow the game down. Not only is it a lot for players to then parse through, but if you're going into all these descriptions, you've got to make sure that what your character is thinking and saying and actually doing is pretty clear in there. For example, hey, my character is checking for traps, instead of describing every little detail that she looks for, checking the hinges, checking the frame of the door. You can add a little bit of that, of course, but make sure the action is very clear and you say she's checking for traps. This gives the GM a very easy action to resolve and then continue pushing the thread forward. It also gives other players an attempt or an action to react to that. Tip number 2, use conditional actions. What do I mean by that? So you want to write, if this, then that, whenever you can. For example, if I reach the door first, I'm going to kick it in. If someone else gets there first, then I'm going to watch the hallway behind us. So it kind of gives you 2 ways that the GM can fit your character into the narration and then keep things moving. This is especially helpful if you walk away from Discord for a few hours and there's no stalling as the GM waits to get clarification from you since you didn't arrive at the door first. Tip number 3, and I think this is why our games work so well with the play-by-post format, put all of your quests on a clock or your sessions on a clock. Give every play-by-post session a clear start date and a clear end date. I think that that'll help keep it concise. In our West Marches game, roleplay quests generally have a 1-month window. If that quest is not finished, we just try to quickly wrap it up in that last couple days and then move it to a live session or resolve it in a different way. The exact time frame could be shorter or longer depending on your group, but we find that 1 month is substantial enough. You can get a combat in there, and then you can also do quite a bit of investigation all in a month. Don't forget to add reminders hey, we have 2 days left, let's finish up any final things you want to do. That way you can keep everybody focused on the quest, and then knowing that there's an end date, they're more likely to come back and check regularly to help resolve things. Tip number 4, this one's specifically about combat. Make your initiative easy to find. So combat in a play-by-post game can just bog things down. One thing that helps with this is to make your initiative very visible. On our West Marches server, we use Foundry, but I find the Foundry a little bit clunky to use for a play-by-post because everybody has to log out, and Foundry is not mobile friendly, so everybody has to go to the Foundry to look up things. It's not ideal. The other thing that I like to do instead is to screenshot the initiative and post it into the group, or just type it out and pin it into a thread. This makes it so that everybody can find it, everybody can go to the pins and find initiative really quickly, and you don't have to worry about Foundry not being mobile friendly. Tip number 5, again, this is for combat specifically. So if your tabletop game doesn't have combat, not gonna help you. You wanna have all your players set a default combat action. This default action is what their character is going to do if they cannot respond within a set period of time. For our play-by-post games, we give everybody an 8-hour window. If they do not respond within 8 hours, their default action kicks in. This also keeps them coming back regularly. 8 hours is plenty of time to check in, but you can choose your own timing for this. For example, whenever we have players, they typically pick like a cantrip or some sort of action like that that's not going to use a spell slot, not going to have a lot of repercussions. Typically I have one like, oh, I'm going to cast Thorn Whip at the nearest enemy and pull them closer. Unless an ally is unconscious or in need of healing, then I'll cast Cure Wounds instead. Honestly, we don't use default actions very often, but it's good to have just in case, to prevent things from freezing up mid-combat and never getting back to it. If you like what you're watching, consider supporting me on Patreon, the best way to support creators on YouTube. You can get behind the scenes, plus you can get ad-free versions of my videos. Also, live streams, there's shop discounts, hopefully some paper products coming out, definitely a magazine in the works. There's lots of stuff there. Link in the description. Another combat tip for tip number 6, you want to simplify your combat. The biggest one is to group similar monsters into one initiative instead of having every monster roll initiative and scattering them. It makes it easier. Players know what to expect. It's easier to tag the GM when it's their turn. It reduces that back and forth time that happens. One thing that I really love doing is to actually make the monsters a little bit more dangerous, but easier to defeat. So in other words, they have slightly more damage. Maybe we double the die or we add to their modifiers, but they have way less HP or a lower AC. The goal is to make this combat very decisive and very quick, but not to make it unfair. So you have to be pretty careful when you adjust these stats. Tip number 7, resolve combat in batches. Typically what I do in my play-by-post games is I let all the players post their actions and rolls for the round. When they're finished with their turn, they'll tag the next person in initiative, and then that person can just go ahead and not wait for me to get into the game. Instead, what I do at the end of the turn or at the end of the round or at the end of like a major event, I will discuss what happened in the round in entirety. Tip number 8, you're gonna wanna do theater of the mind. Tactical maps can be helpful to an extent to visualize things, but I have done both with a tactical map and with just theater of the mind. And I find that the theater of the mind with a play-by-post is way easier because you're not having to worry about movement as much. I find that you always have to ask for clarification on who's moving where when you use a tactical map. I think that creates more work because you have to update tokens, positions, and ranges. But what we want to do is simplify combat since it's already going to take us weeks to get through it. Theater of the mind is definitely faster. You can still keep the battlefield pretty clear. You can narrate, hey, this person's standing in the doorway, the wizard is in the back, the rogue is near these people. But I highly discourage you from using a detailed map unless positioning truly matters, in which case you might just want to do a live session. Tip number 9, and the last tip I have for you guys is to set expectations and communicate. Like the number 1 tip for every D&D video, I swear. Play-by-post does not require everyone to be present at one time, which is the great flexibility, but it still requires commitment from every player, okay? Players need to be able to check in to the thread regularly, make rolls, respond when it's their turn, and communicate when they are not available. And this is pretty key, right? Before the campaign even starts, before the quest line starts, you want to agree on response times, default actions, quest lengths, and just general combat procedures so that everybody's on the same page. I would also recommend giving players a place to comment or talk outside of the game, so a place for out of character updates. That way they can send a quick note like, I'm having a busy week, I'm gonna be slow to respond, and that prevents everyone else from wondering, well, it's their turn, when are they coming back? Okay, so hopefully all of these tips were helpful and not discouraging. Play-by-post is not necessarily the easiest way to run D&D, but it can be the most flexible and one of the most rewarding because fleshing out your character in these writing prompts is kind of fun. Just remember, keep the writing clear, use conditional actions. You want to set deadlines and streamline that combat, and just make sure everybody understands it is a commitment. You're still committing to a D&D game. I think following those tips will help prevent people's games from fizzling. I've heard plenty of stories about play-by-post threads just fizzling out completely. So far, we've been doing really well with ours. If you've run any play-by-post games, tell me in the comments what helped your group. If your group fizzled out, what was the main cause of that? Of course, if you want more West Marches related stuff, more play-by-post, Foundry, Discord, tabletop, campaign content, please subscribe because it helps me. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!